Hello there, Shortcuts. This is video 2 for the week of the 23rd of July, which 9 p.m. on the 23rd of July, which is this Wednesday. This price list will go out at Sydney time, 9 p.m. If you would like to be on the price list, drop me an email, shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. This is the classic rock list. I just recorded a genre list that had all sorts of weird and wonderful things on. Please check it out. The Jungle Brothers, some Sabbath, Skull Snaps. So really good. This is classic rock through and through. There is a little bit of post-punk and various other things as well, but we'll broaden the definition. All right, I always like to debate where to start, and I debated between the first two albums, and I settled on this. Now, this will be the first time in the history of Shortcuts that a band will have the kickoff record for a list 2 weeks in a row. Last week, I had the Japanese first press of Steely Dan's Asia, which is a Steely Dan album I can appreciate. I can understand its appeal, but I don't love it. Whereas this is a Steely Dan album that I genuinely love. And so this is Pretzel Logic, Steely Dan. Now it's a Japanese gatefold hard cardboard with this absolutely fantastic, look at that. That's the centerfold. Deeply weird, elongated view of Steely Dan as they were at that time. Even though, let me see, I thought they might name who's in here. Well, obviously you've got Fagan and Becker, and you've got the Pretzel seller on the front. What an album. This is maybe one of the singular crossover records of any career trajectory. This is Steely Dan stopping being a touring band and Steely Dan becoming the studio alter ego of Beckett and Fagan. And so this is where that switch begins to happen. This is where we see the move toward that cerebral session musician perfectionism, lots of genre-bending sounds. Whereas here, you have 33 minutes of the tightest kind of classic rock music that they ever made, packed with hooks, packed with typical biting commentary, packed with meticulous arrangements, but I think a little bit more accessible, a little bit warmer, a little bit more not quite as murderously clinical as they became. Like, I can't do Gaucho, really. I can kind of do Asia. I can absolutely love Pretzel Logic. And it starts with Ricky Don't Lose That Number. That is, I know that you can go right the way back to Can't Stop the Feeling and you know, just love those early singles. But Ricky Don't Lose That Number is perfection. I think I really do. But the brilliance of this record isn't just singles. It's the bebop, it's the blues hooks, it's the funk filtered through this singular pop rock lens. Parker's Bird, that kind of nod to Charlie Parker, is super accessible and brilliant. Any major dude will tell you is really lovely, kind of soft, squidgy Steely Dan, which they never ever were again. This is where they're not seriously sophisticated, but they're seriously brilliant. And so you pick your poison here. The great thing about the Japanese press, the sleeve's wonderful, but this is the label. It is just a fantastic sounding record. Just a lovely, warm record. I mean, it's on Rolling Stone's 500 greatest albums of all time for a reason. Yeah, it's just lovely. And so that's the Gatefold Japanese Pretzel Logic. This is the record that I debated swapping with Pretzel Logic and decided not to. This is the Japanese first press of Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here. Now, what is really cool about this particular copy is A, the vinyl is absolutely pristine, and B, it includes the postcard, and it includes, as well as all the inners and stuff that are all present and correct, it includes the poster. The Japanese version of the poster, SOPO 100, for those of you who want to know. There it is. I don't think I've ever had a copy with the poster, the postcard, and everything quite as pristine as this. I don't think that's ever happened before, and so I need to go back through the archives. But whoever picks this up is picking up a genuinely beautiful copy of one of the most expansive, meditative, and emotionally, I guess, resonant classic rock albums of all time. It's just all because of Shine On, You Crazy Diamond, that paean to their long lost friend, Sydney Barrett. And it's a song. I mean, this is true. It's in 9 movements. They're named on the sleeve. Let's do this. If I can find it. Shine On, You Crazy Diamond, parts 1, 2, and 3. 4, 5, and 6. I mean, Shine On, You Crazy Diamond, 13 minutes, 30 seconds, and then a further 12 minutes and 27 seconds. It's, 26 minutes of the record. It is the heart of the record. You know what's just killer about this is you've also got Wish You Were Here, the title track. You've also got Have a Cigar. You've also got Welcome to the Machine. I mean, Metal, Dark Side, Animals, Wish You Were Here, The Wall. Has there ever been a better, more varied, more resonant 5-album streak? I don't know. I suppose there's some people that might argue, Let It Bleed through to Goat's Head Soup, or maybe there's some people who might argue Rubber Soul through to Let It Be, or maybe the White Album. I'm not sure. I don't know. I think it might be the best. I don't know. It's beloved for a reason. Anyway, we could talk about that all day. We just mentioned the Beatles. What about this? This is the Let It Be pressing from 1971, which is a very bassy, warm-sounding pressing from Japan, including Obi. But it also comes, for those of you who are eagle-eyed, with this, which is the Japanese press of the single Let It Be, with the lyrics. Let It Be is an incredibly beautiful number given a very sincere and melodic treatment by Paul McCartney. I will save you the rest, but there's little listening notes. The single itself is, just trust me, it's absolutely pristine. And then there's the single itself, and there's the B-side, which is You Know My Name, Look Up the Number. Just a lovely little thing to add to a great pressing of the final release. Not the final thing they ever recorded, but the final release that the Beatles made in their storied career. Hard cardboard gatefold, Let It Be. Okay. This particular record has become a bit of a stalwart of shortcuts, not because there's enough of them for it ever to be shortcuts royalty, which is 50 sales, because I haven't had enough, but because of those of you who bought it and the feedback that you've given me. This is a collector's prize. This is the Japanese master sound of Thriller. For those of you who aren't aware, it's a box of the album with all the inners and posters, etc., present and correct, but pressed on this phenomenal vinyl, the Master Sound vinyl. This is in absolutely spectacular condition. If this has been played any more than a handful of times, and by the way, the way it often tells the spindle hole, can you see there that spindle hole is just in perfect condition? It is not cracked. In fact, there's little fibers in the middle of it that make it genuinely look that it has never been played, because when those little fibers and things meet the spindle, they get worn away. And so it's just a very, very subtle way of really getting a sense of whether a record has been played a lot. Check, when you're checking your records, check in strong light for obvious marks and, scuffs and scratches. Check the plane to make sure that it's not warped, and then check the spindle hole to make sure that it's not jagged and worn and misshapen, which sometimes happen when a record's played on a badly weighted turntable. It gives you a good sense of a record that may be past its best by date. All right, Japanese first press of Buffalo Springfield again. Buffalo Springfield, really kind of flash in the pan supergroup. Their audience way outlived their kind of relatively brief career. Neil Young, Stephen Stills, Richie Furay, LA-based, really pretty pioneered folk rock, led the course for Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and then ultimately Neil Young. This is the album that features that kind of baroque psychedelia of Expecting to Fly, which became, kind of if not an upper tier Neil Young song, but gets there. And also Mr. Soul, which he covered in his MTV Unplugged set, which became kind of legendary all on its own. And that acoustic version of Mr. Soul, let's just say, is very different to the version that's on Buffalo Springfield again. Very, very interesting record. Anyway, well worth spinning and deciding, and it's not very expensive, but it is really, I like it a lot. All right, now I've got a band that I very rarely feature just because of how hard it is to get their records. This is an album called Now by the Flamin Groovies. Flamin Groovies, San Francisco garage rock band. Teenage Head is the kind of peak of their garage rock fame. An album that came out around about the same time as Sticky Fingers, and that Mick Jagger supposedly said in an interview was better than Sticky Fingers. This record is more of a Beatles throwback. You've got Beatlesy harmonies. You'll hear a lot of Birds, but you still have that kind of Stonesy swagger. They cover classic songs like Feel a Whole Lot Better, but their originals, particularly two, Between the Lines and Take Me Back, are worth the price of entry alone. I love the Flamin' Groovies, one of my favourite bands. They're never a band that sold well, although most people may have heard their 70s single Shake Some Action, which is pretty great, but this is a band that links, Big Star to the Byrds, and you therefore are worthy of your time. Really crisp, analog, fun sound. Okay, now I've got a a selection of Aussie presses. That was a New Zealand press. I've got a selection of Aussie presses all the way through. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because some of these will be pretty familiar to you, but some of them won't. This is a really interesting record. This is Silvertone, which is the first album by Chris Isaak. Pretty much all of us know Chris Isaak because of Wicked Game. That video on the beach with Helena Christensen, that kind of Roy Orbison style vocal, the kind of surf rock guitar, and that what I would describe as David Lynchian cool. And this is what's interesting about Silvertone, his debut album. It did not make any waves, but it laid the foundation for the cult following that came with Wicked Game. What's the link to David Lynch is that tracks like, let me see if I can remember which ones. It might be Back on Your Side. Maybe Pretty Girls Don't Cry. I can't remember. But there were a few of these tracks that were used on the Blue Velvet and Wild at Heart soundtracks by David Lynch. And that makes total sense because those movies are kind of like extreme versions of 50s noir westerns, and that's where this music lives. This is what I hear. I hear kind of a weird Roy Orbison surf 50s kind of tone and that kind of silvery guitar. And so anyway, he became very famous after this record. But I think for those of you who are Chris Isaak fans, maybe this record is a little bit underappreciated. Anyway, let me know in the comments. I have the Aussie version of Parallel Lines, the repress that was done in 79 that featured, as it describes here, the extended disco version of Heart of Glass, which is, let's be clear, a completely genius song. Completely. There is nothing about that track that I would change. It is amazing. And so you have Blondie, this kind of synth punk band, making what is undoubtedly one of the touchstone disco anthems. Oh man, led the way to becoming a global phenomenon. This album is just a masterclass. Hanging on the Telephone, picture this. I think in terms of late 70s records, it is very hard to think of a better record than this. It's up there with Marquee Moon. And, you know, you've got tracks like Fade Away and Radiate. If you don't know Fade Away and Radiate, go to a room, put that track on as loud as you can and sit back and let that happen to you. It is an amazing song. Parallel Lines is, I think, it is the reason why Blondie are still in the discussion. This is the album, a cornerstone of new wave. All right, we have After the Gold Rush, the Aussie. I think this might be the Aussie first press. I'm not sure, but it's in quite nice condition. The Aussie press still got the because this tends to kind of wrinkle and fade away, but in this particular copy, it's actually really nice. After the Gold Rush, 1970. Neil Young's kind of second, I guess, first probably foray into acoustic country rock that maybe most people think he perfected with Harvest. But there are plenty of us who think After the Gold Rush is, you know, on a level with Harvest. The album is really spare. It's got these great ballads like Only Love Can Break Your Heart, but it's also got Southern Man, which is as fierce and accusatory as they ever got. It has some really kind of weird psychedelic folk, like Don't Let It Bring You Down. I really love his piano and harmonica playing. It may not have been the blockbuster that Harvest became, but it is well worth your time. Really, really great. And it has this other little foible that I'm going to have a little complaint about, which is the Crippled Creek Ferry, which is the final track, which is way too short. It just every time it fades away, I'm like, no, I want another 2 minutes of this. What the hell, Neil? You shortchanged me of a track that I love. Talking about a track that people love, what's love got to do with it? The cornerstone track of one of the great comeback albums, Tina Turner's Private Dancer. Can't Stand the Rain, Let's Stay Together, Private Dancer itself. This album truly was a resurrection. This is someone leaving Ike Turner in the distant rearview mirror and saying, this is Tina and I'm bloody awesome. And this was returning with a vengeance. An all-star cast, a completely killer vocal performance. When you listen to this album again, though, one of the things that sticks out is how nice the bass tone is. I was reading it won a bunch of Grammys. I can't remember how many Grammys it won, but one that it did win was in engineering. I think Private Dancer or What's Love Got to Do with It was Record of the Year. I am almost certain she won Female Vocal of the Year. Yeah, really, really, really fine record. Okay, I gotta be quick because we've only got a couple of minutes left. We have the Aussie first press of Billy Bragg's, I think, arguably his best record, Talking with the Taxman about poetry. The Bard of Barking emerged from the UK kind of poke and funk folk scene with little more than a Telecaster guitar and some lyrics and a sharp, biting, left-leaning voice. And this album expands on that sound a little bit. I suppose it's the, quote, as it describes on the sleeve, the difficult third album. It wasn't really that difficult for him. Levi Stubbs' Tears is brilliant. Greetings to the New Brunette features Johnny Marr on guitar and is a romantic Bragg amongst the politics and bite. You still have tracks like Ideology and there's Power in a Union where he wears his socialism on his sleeve, but the production is richer and there are better songs in my view than the previous albums, and I think that's why it was probably his most successful. All right, a couple of interesting best ofs to come. This is Vital Idol. For those of you who aren't aware, this is a remix album where key tracks like White Wedding, Moni Moni, Hot in the City, Dancing with Myself, etc. were remixed, extended with more kind of dance mixes, but more importantly, with the guitar right out and really front and center. I think that Money Money or Moni Moni is probably the one that I'm drawn to. I kind of scanned through this record, but Moni Moni is live and it's full on. It's, a really, really cool record of the crowd chanting back, etc. I like that one a lot. All right, I have next the Dire Straits compilation, Money for Nothing, Sultans of Swing, Romeo and Juliet, Walk of Life, Private Investigation, Money for Nothing, and a previously unreleased live version of Portobello Bell, which is actually really beautiful. And so I suppose that's the kind of hook that they had. This is a really interesting record. My mum had this one on CD. I remember listening to it a lot. And I mentioned last week when we were talking about Brothers in Arms that going to see Dire Straits live show was like an event. This record is listed. It is the tracks follow how you might think a live show might follow. It really feels like they're just bringing you through the live experience. It's kind of interesting. And for those of you who love Dire Straits but don't want to buy all the records, it's got everything that you ever need, really, I think. The Steve Lillywhite produced Simple Minds Sparkle in the Rain I suppose this is where Simple Minds struck gold. Steve Lillywhite was the producer of U2. Also produced the Pose's best album in oh my gosh, the name of the Pose album is the album that's got Fairy Tale of New York on it. The name has escaped me. It'll come back to me as soon as I stop thinking about it. But Steve Lillywhite was really a pretty legendary 80s producer. And Sparkle in the Rain is maybe where I think Simple Minds came of age. And it's all because of Don't You Forget About Me, which conquered America. I have two more to go. You know I love classic album and single combos. Well, this is an unusual one. This is the Aussie first press of Nielsen Schmielsen, but it comes with a really lovely copy of Without You, the single, which I think is become even more notorious, but it's also the B-side is Gotta Get Up, which is a really great song as well. If you don't know Nielsen Schmielsen, this is Harry Nielsen's probably what most people would consider his masterpiece. It's still eccentric, it's still quirky, it's got its odd features, but it also has like the woozy kind of crazy psychedelic funk of Coconut, but it's also got Jump Into the Fire, a rock song which you will notice from so many soundtracks over the years. I'm pretty sure I was talking about the Grammy wins that Tina Turner had. I'm pretty sure Harry Nielsen pocketed a Grammy or two for Without You, which I hope so. He deserved it. And then finally, Oral Sculpture by the Stranglers, 1984. Now, there's the ear, the Oral Sculpture, and then you get close-ups of the ears of all four members. Hugh Cornwall's ear, a bit glossy, quite pointy. Jet Black's kind of wide and looks like he keeps it pretty clean, not very hairy. JJ Benarel's is kind of twisted and dark, which would make a lot of sense. Dave Greenfeld's, I don't know, kind of similar to Hugh Cornwell's. Anyway, this is the album that features Ice Queen, Skin Deep, Mad Hatter. This is where the Stranglers kind of started to really integrate horns and other textures into their songs, and Dave Greenfield's keyboard is really prevalent. I like how sleek and sinister some of this sounds, and Let Me Down Easily is really fun. So I don't know. I never expected Stax to meet Northern synth punk, but it did with this record, and it's really good. All right, that is it. If you would like to be on this price list, drop me an email, shortcutsrecords@aus@gmail.com. Please leave me a comment, all that stuff, interact. The algorithms like that stuff. And if you have any comments, please let me know. Thank you. Bye.